Just eat it, Olivia. Stop being so dramatic. My mom snapped, pushing the plate of shrimp pasta toward me. The familiar tightness crept into my throat just from the smell. Everyone else is enjoying it. You're ruining another family dinner. I'm Olivia Mitchell, 24, and for as long as I can remember, certain foods have made me sick. Not just uncomfortable, but really sick. Throat tightening, stomach cramping, dizziness kind of sick. But according to my family, I was just being difficult. Mom, please, I said quietly, pushing the plate away. You know seafood makes me ill. My sister Kate rolled her eyes from across the table. Oh, here we go again with your mysterious reactions. You ate fish sticks all the time when we were kids. That was before I started, but Dad cut me off. Enough. Your mother spent hours cooking this meal. The least you could do is show some appreciation. I looked down at my empty plate, fighting back tears. This was every family dinner, me trying to explain, then refusing to listen. The worst part, they were right about one thing. I hadn't always been like this. The reactions started when I was 16, and since then, the list of foods I couldn't tolerate kept growing. Fine, my mom sighed dramatically. I suppose you want your special plain chicken and rice again. Like a child. Before I could respond, Kate jumped in. She's just doing this for attention, Mom. Remember last month when she claimed she was allergic to the birthday cake at my engagement party? I remembered. I also remembered spending that night violently ill. But nobody saw that part because I'd learned to hide my reactions. It was easier than dealing with their mockery. My dad reached across the table and put a small portion of pasta on my plate. Just try a bite, princess. Your mother's right. This picky eating has gone on long enough. I stared at the pasta, my heart racing. They didn't understand. They never understood. Every time I tried to explain about the throat tightening, the difficulty breathing, the crushing stomach pain, they dismissed it as anxiety or attention-seeking. I can't, I whispered, standing up. I'm sorry, but I can't. Sit down. Mom's voice cracked like a whip. You're 24 years old, for heaven's sake. This is ridiculous. I remained standing, gathering my courage. What's ridiculous is that none of you believe me. I've been telling you for years that something's wrong, but you won't listen. Kate snorted. Oh, we listen. We listen to your new food drama every single week. Last month it was dairy. Before that it was nuts. Now it's seafood. What's next, Air? Actually, a quiet voice spoke up from the end of the table. My brother Mike, who usually stayed out of these conflicts, cleared his throat. I've noticed she gets really red and blotchy after certain foods. Maybe there's something. Don't encourage her, Mom interrupted. She's perfectly fine. This is just like when she was convinced she had chronic fatigue in college. Remember that drama? I did remember. I also remember the doctor suggesting food allergy testing back then. But my parents had dismissed it as unnecessary. They were convinced it was all in my head. The shrimp pasta sat on my plate, taunting me. The smell alone was making my throat feel tight. But years of their disbelief had planted seeds of doubt in my own mind. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was being dramatic. With trembling hands, I picked up my fork. Everyone watched as I took a tiny bite, their expressions a mix of triumph and expectation. The reaction was almost immediate. My throat began to close, and the familiar panic set in. But this time it was different, worse than ever before. See, Mom said proudly, nothing happened. Just like we said. I tried to speak, to tell them something was very wrong. But no words came out. The room started spinning, and the last thing I heard was Mike's alarm voice saying, "Her face. Look at her face." Then everything went black. I woke up to bright lights and the steady beep of hospital monitors. Mike was sitting beside my bed, his face drawn with worry. In the hallway, I could hear my parents' voices arguing with someone. What happened? I managed to whisper. Mike squeezed my hand. You had a severe allergic reaction. They had to use 2 EpiPens in the ambulance. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. They said if we waited any longer to call 911. The door opened and a doctor walked in, followed by my pale-faced parents. Ms. Mitchell, she said, looking at her chart. We've got your initial test results back, and I have to say, I'm concerned about what I'm seeing. The doctor's words hung in the air as she pulled up my test results on her tablet. Ms. Mitchell has one of the most severe cases of multiple food protein intolerance syndrome I've seen, combined with several life-threatening allergies. My mother sank into the chair beside Mike, her face ashen. But she was fine as a child. This can't be right. Actually, the doctor continued, her voice firm. FPIES and severe allergies can develop at any age. Looking at her medical history, the symptoms started appearing in her teens. As no one investigated this before. Dad shifted uncomfortably. We thought she was just being particular about food. Particular? The doctor's eyebrows shot up. These test results show severe reactions to shellfish, dairy, nuts, and several other protein groups. This isn't about being particular. These reactions could be fatal. I watched as the weight of those words settled over my family. Years of dismissal, mockery, and forced feeding flashed through my mind. All those times I begged them to believe me, only to be told I was seeking attention. The blood tests also show significant inflammation markers. The doctor continued, turning the tablet so they could see. Her body has been under constant stress from repeated exposure to trigger foods. Frankly, I'm concerned about the long-term damage this has caused. Mom started crying quietly, but I felt oddly detached from her tears. Where was this concern when I was doubled over in pain after family dinners? Where was this worry when I begged to see a specialist? We'll need to run more comprehensive allergy panels, the doctor explained, but for now, I'm prescribing 2 EpiPens that she must carry at all times. And we'll need to discuss a strict elimination diet. I've basically been doing that already, I interrupted, my voice hoarse. When I could. When I was allowed to. The sharp intake of breath from my parents told me the blow had landed. Good. Mike, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. I should have said something sooner. I noticed how sick she would get, but I didn't want to cause problems. The doctor made some notes on her tablet. Going forward, Ms. Mitchell will need her entire family's support. This condition requires careful management. One mistake could be catastrophic. As if to emphasize her point, a nurse came in to adjust my IV drip. Your anaphylactic response was severe, she explained kindly. We'll need to keep you under observation for at least another 24 hours. Kate chose that moment to burst into the room, her face streaked with tears. I came as soon as Mike called. Olivia, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. But I wasn't ready for her apology. Not yet. Not after years of her leading the charge and mocking my food drama. Ms. Mitchell needs rest. The doctor intervened, clearly sensing the tension. I'll have the nurse bring in some information packets about FPIES and anaphylaxis. I strongly recommend the whole family educate themselves about these conditions. After the doctor left, an uncomfortable silence filled the room. My parents looked lost, Kate kept wiping away tears, and Mike just held my hand, his grip steady and apologetic. Finally, Mom spoke, her voice small. Why didn't you push harder to make us understand? Why didn't you insist on seeing a doctor? I stared at her in disbelief. I did. For years I did. You told me I was being dramatic. You told me it was all in my head. You forced me to eat foods that made me sick because you didn't believe me. We didn't know, Dad started, but I cut him off. You didn't want to know, I corrected him. It was easier to blame me than to admit something might actually be wrong. Do you know how scary it is to feel your throat closing up while your own family tells you you're faking it? The monitors betrayed my rising stress levels, their beeping increasing slightly. Mike squeezed my hand in warning. The doctor said I could have died tonight. I continued, my voice shaking. If Mike hadn't noticed my reaction and called 911, I could have died at our dinner table while you all told me to stop being dramatic. The truth of those words seemed to hit them like a physical blow. Mom started sobbing in earnest now. Dad looked like he aged 10 years, and Kate couldn't even meet my eyes. A nurse poked her head in. Everything okay in here? Her heart rate is elevated. We were just leaving, Mike said firmly, giving our parents a pointed look. My sister needs to rest. As they filed out, each looking more devastated than the last, I felt a strange mix of vindication and exhaustion. The truth was finally out, backed by undeniable medical evidence. But the cost of that validation had almost been my life. Mike stayed behind briefly. I'll be back tomorrow with your things. And Olivia? He paused at the door. I'm so sorry I didn't speak up sooner. That changes now. As the door closed behind him, I closed my eyes, finally letting my tears fall. Years of being disbelieved, dismissed, and mocked had led to this moment. But as I drifted off to sleep, one thought kept circling in my mind. What would happen now that they couldn't deny my condition anymore? 3 months after my hospitalization, I sat in my new apartment, carefully reviewing the menu for our first family dinner since the incident. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Just double checking. Olive oil is safe, right? I cleaned the entire kitchen and bought new pots to avoid cross-contamination. I smiled slightly at her message. The change in my family had been dramatic, though it took nearly losing me to get here. The days following my hospital stay had been intense. My parents, shaken by how close they'd come to losing their daughter, threw themselves into learning everything they could about my conditions. Dad spent hours researching FPIES and anaphylaxis, while Mom joined online support groups for families dealing with severe food allergies. Kate, perhaps feeling the most guilty about her past behavior, had completely transformed. She postponed her engagement party to help me move into my own place, away from our parents' well-meaning but overwhelming concern. "You need a safe space," she'd said, helping me set up a kitchen where I could control every ingredient. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Mike. "Need me to pick up anything from that special grocery store?" Mike had become my strongest advocate. He'd taken a food safety course and learned how to use an EpiPen, then insisted on teaching the rest of the family. "Never again," he'd said firmly during the training session. "We're never risking Olivia's life again." Tonight would be the test, our first family dinner since the hospital. But this time it would be at my place, with my rules. The doorbell rang early. It was Kate carrying several shopping bags. "I brought the special plates and new utensils," she announced. "And I make those allergy-friendly brownies you sent the recipe for. 3 test batches to make sure they were perfect." I hugged her, remembering how far we'd come from her mocking my food drama. Mom and Dad arrived next, Mom clutching her tablet with all my safe recipes saved. Dad carried a container labeled "Safe for Olivia" in bold letters. "I made the quinoa salad exactly as the allergist approved," he said proudly. Mike arrived last, doing one final check of all the ingredients against my safe list before we sat down to eat. The dinner itself was surreal. Instead of pressuring me to eat dangerous foods, my family now watched anxiously as I took each bite, ready to spring into action at the slightest sign of a reaction. It was almost comical how far the pendulum had swung. "You can relax," I assured them, enjoying my safely prepared meal. "Everything's fine." "We can't help it," Mom said softly. "Every time I think about that night, about all the nights we didn't believe you." She trailed off, tears in her eyes. "I found your old diary," Kate admitted suddenly, "from high school. I was helping pack your room and, Olivia, the way you described those reactions, the pain, the fear, and we just kept dismissing you. How can you even stand to be around us?" I set down my fork, considering her question. The truth was, forgiveness hadn't come easily. The first few weeks after the hospital, I'd been angry, furious even. Years of gaslighting and dismissal had left deep emotional scars. "I can stand to be around you because you finally listened," I said carefully. "Yes, it took something dramatic to make you hear me. But once you did, you actually changed. That matters." Dad cleared his throat. "We visited an allergist ourselves," he announced, "to learn more. She helped us understand what you've been going through all these years. The physical symptoms, but also the trauma of not being believed." "We're in family therapy," Mom added, "learning to be better listeners. To trust when our children tell us something's wrong." Mike raised his glass of allergen-free sparkling cider. "To Olivia," he said, "for surviving not just the allergies, but us." Everyone laughed, but I could see the truth of his words hit home. I raised my own glass. To learning and changing, and to safe food. After dinner, as my family helped clean up, using the special allergen-free cleaning products they'd researched, I watched them with a mixture of love and lingering caution. The hypervigilance could be overwhelming sometimes, but it was far better than the dangerous dismissal of before. "Next month's dinner is at our place," Mom said as they prepared to leave. "I've already planned the menu and bought separate cooking equipment, and we've installed an air purifier just in case." I hugged her, remembering the mom who used to force shrimp pasta onto my plate. "Thanks, Mom, for everything." As I closed the door behind them, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been difficult, and the validation had come at a terrifying price. But we made it through. My family had transformed from my biggest threat to my strongest support system. On my phone, a new family group chat notification popped up. "Next week's cooking class. Understanding food allergies. Who's in? I smiled and typed, count me in. Sometimes the hardest lessons come at the highest costs. But watching my family become my fiercest protectors made it all worthwhile. We nearly lost everything to learn this lesson, but in the end, we gained something precious: understanding, respect, and a deeper love built on trust and validation.